Hey, my name's Jared Moon, and I'm part of a group of underground athletes you've probably never even heard of before. Most of us don't even have gym memberships. We don't have every piece of equipment known to man, nor do we have a ton of time to train. And we don't need it because we're achieving amazing things without it. We are garage gym athletes, and these are our stories. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jared Moon here, and welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. With me this week is Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Hey, man. How's the weather where you are?
Not fantastic. A lot of rain, but temperature-wise, it's pretty good.
We are in May Gray in San Diego, and it is just the worst. I feel like I'm in England, and I know it's because I'm pretty much spoiled here with the weather, but I don't care.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has any sympathy for you with the oh man, it's a little bit shady in San Diego.
Oh no, it's full blown overcast and like spits every once in a while, but it's only for like 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, like beach rain, pretty much. Yeah, nothing serious. All right, man. Well, let's get into it. We have some updates this week. I want to talk about first MURPH. So the coolest thing I think about doing the MURPH project on a weekly basis, and for all of you doing it, tagging me on Instagram and following the EO3 MURPH project, that's the hashtag. It's really cool to see you guys doing it. But one thing that I do specifically, and I see other people, I'm not saying you're doing it incorrectly or correctly. I'm not saying that you have to do it this way. So it's MURPH once a week, but I'm holding myself to a standard of MURPH on Saturday, like specifically on Saturday, because to me it adds a certain level of like challenge to make sure that I hold it on that specific day, because we could have 2 soccer games and a football game and a birthday party for the kids, and I still need to fit in MURPH somewhere, either first thing in the morning. If that doesn't happen, now I got to figure it out. So it adds a layer of that mental toughness to it. And so this past week was really challenging because I was in Utah for a business conference, and I could have knocked it out a couple days early or something like that, but I still did it on Saturday. And what was crazy about it is we ended up making good friends with the guy who was hosting the conference, and he has a garage gym, and he's like super into fitness. And he's like, we mentioned it to him, and then my buddy who was with me at the conference mentioned, yeah, Jared does MURPH like every single week. And he's like, that's really interesting. And then he came back later during one of the breaks, and he's like, all right, we got to do MURPH while you're here. Like, I got to do it with you. And I was like, okay. And so he tells us to show up Friday, and I was like, Friday morning, I was like, damn it, I do MURPH on Saturdays. Like, what am I going to do? And so my plan was just to do MURPH twice. I was like, I'll do MURPH Friday, I'll do MURPH Saturday, no big deal. And what ended up happening is we did half MURPH just for time constraints on Friday. So I did half MURPH vested at his house, and then I did it again Saturday morning. But both of these were in Utah. And the reason I bring this stuff up is, one, I did it at elevation much higher than I was accustomed to. And that makes it so much more challenging. Have you done any workouts at elevation?
I have not. I almost never go to the mountains.
Dude, it's crazy because I've done it before. Like, there's this, in pilot training, they start you off at, I don't think it's called this anymore, but it was called initial flight screening, where they screen pilot candidates, and you fly these like little tiny airplanes to see if you have the skills to do well in pilot training. And it's in Pueblo, Colorado, which is at elevation. And I remember you have to take a PT test like the first day that you get there, so you're like not even acclimated at all. And that was like my first like, oh wow, I cannot run as fast, and I can't consume as much oxygen, so it's a big like eye opener. But another thing that happened was in Utah, I got to see my heart rate. And what was crazy is my heart rate was only at like 160 on my last run. And I'm going a lot faster because it's a half MURPH, right? And I'm only 160. Normally I'm like at like 185, 190 on my last mile in MURPH. And it's because it was so fatiguing. I was at such a, deficit in oxygen that my body I felt as tired as I normally would be, but I'm at elevation. And so my heart rate's like, you're not working hard enough. So I don't know. It's just a really interesting take that made it a lot more mentally challenging, and doing it half MURPH then MURPH back to back Also a little extra challenging, but I just wanted to share my my elevated MURPH story.
So does that mean that like people who train at elevation, it's harder for them to get the higher heart rate zones?
No, because you will acclimate, and once you fully acclimate, you're going to be fine. And so what was happening to me is, if you don't have enough oxygen pushing to your your muscles and your extremities, then you're just going to feel tired. You're not going to have you're not going to have the fuel you need to continue producing hard, and your body's just not used to it. And so my heart rate's not getting super elevated just because it can't. I can't push to the normal level that I want. But if I was there for a couple of weeks, I would acclimate, and I'd be more red blood cells and everything, and I'd be fine.
Yeah, okay.
That's how it works, man. How'd your training go this week?
I think pretty good. I'm finally getting back to heavy squat and deadlift I'm probably getting back to the heavy weights there. About 6 or 8 weeks ago, I started doing PT to fix my hip issue. And while I will still be able to lift before that, but I would feel like this pinching and certain stuff in my behind my right hip glute area. So I knew I needed to get it fixed, which, it's just a lesson to know your body and know to get it fixed. And I definitely have some hip issues going on. And I found that as I would squat, I'm shifting to the right side, and that's what caused some pinching. But it's actually due to my left groin or whatever. Anyway, loosening things up, finally getting back on track, and now I'm finally getting above 70-75% of my everything that I was doing before, and it's feeling great. So that's a good progress, even though it's still not banging any really heavy weights. But
and you bring up an interesting point. Like I would challenge all garage gym athletes out there to do is to, even if you're not sending this to a coach, film yourself doing a squat or a deadlift. Particularly squat is when it's normally the most noticeable, but film yourself doing a squat from the back, from the side, and same with like a deadlift, and just see if you have any like extremely noticeable lopsidedness, for lack of a better term. Like, are you seeing your hips shift? Are you leaning to one side? Is the bar perfectly parallel to the ground, or is it leaning? Does it have an angle, a slant? There are a lot of things that you can notice, and those things will not, like you could have had these problems for a year, 2 years, and then it ends up in an injury over time when something has to compensate for something else. So that just reminds me, like, a good tip for garage gym athletes out there, like, make sure that you're as balanced as you can possibly be. And if you see something, then maybe start working on a fix.
Yeah. So I think it was actually just over a year from now when I did something minor to my hip, but I think I noticed when I would video myself, there was a slight shift, but there wasn't any repercussions. I was still able to PR for my back squat. But then later on in this past fall is when I started having the pains, and then the pain just didn't really go away, and I was still feeling it. So, and then just yesterday I was looking back at old Instagram videos, and I'm like, ooh, like there's a shift and a twist, and it usually happens like right when I get out of the bottom of the squat. I'm just like, oh my goodness, it's just kind of painful to look at. It's subtle, but I can feel it in my own body just watching it.
Ouch. All right, man. Well, let's. I have one last update before we hop into the meat of the show. So we talked about episode 1 of this new format. We talked about cortisol and CrossFit and high intensity, and I promise this is not going to become the CrossFit hate podcast. That's not my intention at all. But what I wanted to share, because I don't think that I made this very clear, we got an email from a podcast listener to this podcast, and he kind of illustrates what I was pointing out, but he makes a very good point about the timeline. So I'm going to read it, and then we'll just go from there. So it says, I've been a CrossFitter since I was 33, now 46. I'd gone to the gym for years prior, but found the challenge, pain, and stress of CrossFit right up my alley. Fast forward to 3 years ago, my sleep was poor, and my weight carry around my waist didn't make any sense given my diet and fitness routine. I found my way to a doctor who focused on functional health and checked my cortisol levels. I was running on very little after burning them out. Weirdly, I never really made the no-duh connection to listening to Jared on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast this morning in the Why We Don't Do CrossFit section. He mentioned that functional movements across varied intervals at high intensity completely jack up your cortisol and give you a whole range of problems. He just described the last 3 years of my life. Okay, so I'm reading that not to be like, see, I'm right. Like, that's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I think some people, and I didn't say this in that podcast. Like, it really is the time domain that you have to think about. So if you've been doing high intensity exercise for 2 to 3 years, very consistently, like near daily basis, you might not have any issues yet, especially if you're like in your 20s or something like that. So you're not going to notice any results. The problem with high intensity on a daily basis over and over is the time component. So bodies are incredibly resilient. So it takes a long time to like fully jack things up. But if you find yourself in this situation over time, these are things that you might want to start looking at. It's not like high intensity training in and of itself is inherently dangerous. It's just the consistency over time that can make it jack up your hormones and cause problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I just want to point that out before we move on. So let's hop into the show, man. We're going to start with a study. All right. Let me pull it up. So the study that we will be covering this week, effects of placebo on bench throw performance of Paralympic weightlifting athletes, a pilot study. So that is the name of the study. You can typically Google those. We also, if you're on our mailing list, you will be getting the podcast every Tuesday morning. So we go live on Monday, but we email it out on Tuesday, and we link to any studies we mention in those emails. If you guys want to get access to that, you can sign up at garagegymathlete.com or into3fitness.com. And all roads lead to Rome, and you'll get you'll get that email if you sign up for a newsletter at either one of those spots. And so what we're looking at here specifically is the placebo effect. And if you listen to the Better Humanology for any amount of time, you know I absolutely love the placebo effect because I think it's something that we need to learn how to harness as human beings and use our minds to trick us into doing more cool things. But let's talk about it specifically in supplements for now. So I'm going to throw it to you first, see what your overall understanding of the study, having skimmed it, what's your overall understanding of the study and any key takeaway, and then I'll kind of dive in a little bit deeper.
When I first came across and I started skimming and just thinking of placebo in general, I would always think about like pre-workout and stuff like that, and even with myself and how it affected me like years ago when I used to take it. But it seems pretty obvious. I don't know.
What seems obvious?
I don't know.
The placebo effect seems obvious.
Somewhat to the like caffeine, giving somebody caffeine or thinking like, hey, this is going to make you play or do better. You know, think back to what is it? Space Jam, Michael Jordan's special drink.
Yes.
It's basically that. I learned that from a young age.
So it makes sense to you that when given a placebo, it makes people perform better.
Well, when people compete and when people when athletes compete and athletes want to do better, and it's all about just pushing further. And if somebody tells you, hey, if you do this or I give you this, you're going to do a lot better. I mean, 90% of all of marketing in the fitness industry is basically that. People just want more, want better, and are going to go searching anywhere to find it. And when that runs its course, they're going to go find something somewhere else. And it might not even have anything to do with said supplement or said component. It's just, hey, you're just doing it. Yeah.
And so let me dive into this study a little bit more. So what they were doing, they would give. And what's interesting, so like the most proven supplements out there, in my opinion, if I had to name two, would be caffeine and creatine. They're probably the most studied and most proven supplements for actually increasing performance. And this one the placebo was actually, they thought that they were taking caffeine. So they were, a supplement that is already proven. So it's not like, you know what I mean? Like, you could be like, hey, we have this new orange pill and we're just going to call it the orange pill that's going to make you do a lot better. They specifically told the athletes, hey, you're taking a caffeinated supplement, a caffeine pill, and saw what wanted to see what their performance was going to be. And then what's interesting is they didn't increase across all areas, but they did increase across specifically. Let's see, hold on. they had the 50% 1 rep max bench throws, which is pretty crazy. So they didn't across the other ones. Like there was a 70% and 80%, 50 and 60. So 60% they actually did do the velocity was faster and they performed better in those studies. So the only thing that I like to point out there is, one, the placebo wasn't overwhelmingly like this, like, hey, we gave them placebo, everyone got better in every single area. So the placebo effect is most of the time not this overwhelmingly awesome thing. It's just this slight effect. So they tested like 3 or 4 different areas. In one specific area, the 50% bench throws, they got faster, there's more velocity, their performance was increased. And they looked at a bunch of different things and concluded, that the only real way to account for it was the placebo effect, because these people were not actually receiving a caffeine pill. And I like to point these things out, but you kind of have to contrast it with some other studies. And so I'm going to bring up another one. It was a 2014 study on weight loss, and participants were given weight loss counseling and guidance to lose weight, and also randomized into groups that were either 1, given a placebo for 12 weeks and told it was a weight loss supplement, 2, given a placebo for 12 weeks and told they had 50% chance of it being a supplement or placebo, or 3, given nothing. And across all groups, the participants who believed more strongly in the effectiveness of supplements tended to lose smaller proportion of weight. So the people who believed in the supplements the most lost the least amount of weight. So this is saying, and what this starts to lead us towards is this self-efficacy theory. And there's a lot of studies published on SDT, which is self-determination theory, which is really like, if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to be able to achieve much. And so I always kind of toe the line here, because it's pointed out that if you are the type of person who does not have a lot of self-esteem, you don't believe in yourself that much, then the tendency is that the placebo effect, specifically for something like supplements, is going to be more effective on you. So that's just kind of a statement of fact from this study and some other studies. But what you have to keep in mind is to not look at that necessarily as a negative. If you know you're sitting here listening to this and you're like, I don't have a ton of self-esteem, especially in the physical fitness realm, maybe supplements will help you get that mental edge that you need, but over-reliance on them will kill your self-efficacy in the long run and not give you the skill that you need, which is self-efficacy, believing in yourself, this overall belief that you can achieve something through hard work. So you got to toe the line. But on the other hand, like, you need to harness the placebo effect. Like if I talk about this idea of, the new running shoes, right? So if you get new running shoes, what are you going to be doing for the next week or two? You'll probably be running a lot more, right? So like you're kind of harnessing this, like, okay, I got a new pair of shoes, I'm going to run more. And the same with, hey, I don't really believe in myself as much, then I'm going to have the supplement that's going to help me out. Like, you need to constantly be using these things to your advantage by, taking advantage of the placebo effect, taking advantage of new things, but not so much so that there's this over-reliance that takes away your self-efficacy, your self-belief.
Yeah, I think when I first started working out and like being in the military and stuff, people would get me on pre-workouts. And then after a while, I kind of realized that it was a crutch. And I knew, for one, that like, okay, I know this isn't quite doing a ton for me, but I just mentally, I need, I can't think of the right word, but I knew that I needed that in order to work out, or else I wasn't going to work out. So,
I legitimately had friends in college who would run out of pre-workout supplement and skip the gym. I'd be like, hey man, I'm going to go train. And they'd be like, well, I just ran out of Jacked 3D. So like, I'll go tomorrow after I'm like, are you joking? Like, are you serious about that? And it's true. It becomes this huge mental hold on your game. So what's the big takeaway I have for garage gym athletes out there with studies that prove, one, the placebo effect works, but only to a certain degree. And two, with this other study, kind of pointing out that self-efficacy is probably the most important thing in your fitness journey. I'll just go ahead and say your life journey, believing in yourself. The main takeaway I would have is, one, focus on self-efficacy first. like making sure that you, believe in yourself first and foremost, and knowing that a supplement is that, it's only a supplement. And so my second takeaway would be, you need to realize that you don't need supplements. That's really like, you don't need them. That's kind of what this proves. Like if you can very strongly believe in yourself and your ability to do work, you don't need supplements. Now, I did mention caffeine and creatine being two really proven through many, like we only have a couple studies on supplements and placebo. I could pull up probably at least 100 studies each on both caffeine and creatine on performance. And we could talk about those all day, and we probably will at some point, but those two are really proven, will help you at a cellular level. Like they just help you. Caffeine, even if you're really addicted to caffeine, you don't really notice its effects. There are studies that say it still helps you perform better. And so what I would say is you don't need all these other supplements. There are like a couple that actually work. So drop the supplements. You don't need them. A lot of people in our group, our training, our community are already there. They don't really believe in supplements or use them too much. And that's kind of always been my stance. But if you're someone who's like, yeah, I need the BCAAs, I need the pre-workout, I need the post, I need all these things. Remember, they're just supplements. They're not actually going to help you that much. If anything, it's a slight edge over the work that you're going to be putting in. And that's what you should really focus on. Now, to go further, I kind of do like to differentiate food supplements, which would be like protein or carbohydrate supplements. Like those are just macronutrients. And are those going to help you perform better? No more than an actual macronutrient would be. So, I mean, if after a workout, it's more convenient for you to cook and eat a steak, then do that. But if it's not, and you need to supplement with some form of protein, then that's okay too. But it's really just a macronutrient. It's not going to help you any more than a food would. These other ones, like performance enhancing ones, that aren't illegal, those are the ones that you could look into, but they're not going to help you a ton. So believe in yourself and drop the over usage of supplements. You probably don't need them that much.
I think I'll just also assess where you're at. I mean, if you're still getting into working out and doing a strict program, you probably don't need to have an entire shelf of supplements, because you're going to get so much more benefit, or you're still going to get a ton of benefit just working on the path that you're on. The percent benefit of taking a bunch of supplements aren't going to be that much until you're getting to like a much higher level, and when the smallest percentages might make a difference.
Yeah, that's like 100% true. Like it's not really going to be that beneficial for you. And I see this a lot of people who who have money, basically people who have money and they get into fitness, say in their 40s or late 40s or even 50s, they have all this money and they're like, okay, I'm going to get into fitness. And that comes with buying 20 different supplements just because they don't care if they're wasting the money. Like some people don't buy supplements because it's a monetary thing, right? Like they're just like, I don't have the money to spend on it. Some people, it's not a factor at all. And so they just go balls to the walls. Like, I'm going to buy every supplement possible because it sounds a lot better that this is going to help me as opposed to the hard work. And, you just don't need it. It really is a performance enhancer at the tip of the spear, the top of that pyramid, like you're saying. That's when adding a supplement might be beneficial, but not really before then.
It also makes me something I thought about when you were reading off the weight loss one, about how people who took something or thought they were going to take something lost less. That's probably because they let off the gas a little bit, going, oh, I can have this, or I don't need to do this because I'm taking the supplement and it'll balance me out. But really it's not, and you really still need to just do more.
Yeah, and that's so an interesting thing about that study. So across all the groups, the participants who believe more strongly in the effectiveness of supplements tended to lose a smaller proportion. But then when you look at each group individually, there was no significant change between overall weight loss. So they didn't find that one group was better than the other. They had to look outside their initial parameters and find that, okay, across all groups, the people who believed in the effectiveness of supplements tended to lose a smaller proportion. Yeah, it's because you think that somebody else is putting in the hard, or something else is putting in the hard work for you, right? You're like, oh, here's my easy button. And when someone else or something else is trying to hit that easy button for you, you're damn sure that you're going to see less results than you could have.
Yep.
All right. So, really, I think that's about it. Like, I just really want to emphasize with that study, yes, the placebo effect is real until we fully learn how to harness it. And I think that's something that we can do in daily life, our daily practices. Try to be less skeptical about every single damn thing that you run into, and believe in things. But if you're going to believe in anything, believe in yourself, and that's going to get you a lot further. And then you can branch off from there. All right. So topic of the day, man, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. So this comes up a lot, somewhat in programming and questions that we get for scaling and daily stuff. Because, we're programming for garage gym athletes, people that have gyms at home, and equipment's always never going to be consistent. So we have to program for the least amount of equipment. And then we do like to change it up and program other things like, wall balls or certain carries. And we always get questions of, okay, I don't have this, so what can I do for this or whatnot? And a lot of what I try to stress and what we've talked about before is to really think about the stimulus. And each workout and each exercise, we're not programming something just to program something. We're going for a stimulus for each and everything that we do. So I'm trying to figure out scaling. You got to think about, if you need to sub something out, okay, what stimulus is this doing? And it's not even an exercise case by case basis. So it's not like, okay, we did swings this time, so every single time there's swings, I can do this other thing because it's the same thing. Well, no, it depends on the workout. It could be strength, it could be a superset, it could be a sprint conditioning, something like that. But it depends on what you're doing. So yeah, really trying to, and it'll take some getting used to think about what the proper stimulus is working. A lot of times, the people don't have a box and they can't think of, okay, well, I can't do box jumps, so what should I do? It's like, okay, well, box jumps gets my heart rate up, so maybe I can just do jumping jacks. They're both jumping. It's like, well, no, box jumps, we're doing a very explosive hip movement, so we're going to do tuck jumps instead. That's just one example for there. So something that we really like to stress with athletes, and we can even help, is trying to really think about what stimulus you're doing. Think about the muscles that you're using. Think about, is this a powerful movement? Is this just a cardio type movement? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to kind of elaborate on what you're saying and then also give an example, you could call stimulus the why. So looking at anything, if you see our programming or someone else's programming and you can't do a movement, you should then, a big part of this podcast, I mentioned on the first episode of this new format, is that we want to make athletes as autonomous as possible. So that's what this entire conversation is about. And so keeping that in mind, when you see something programmed, you need to kind of look and not just always say, okay, they said do A, the sub for A equals B, so I will be doing B every time A comes up. That, it doesn't actually work that, sequentially or formulaic like that. You really need to be thinking about the why, or the stimulus, as you're calling it, behind a movement. And one thing that really illustrated this for me and realized that we needed to have a conversation about it was last year. We programmed a lot of kettlebell swings over the course of a week, and one guy, I think he lit us up via email. He was very upset with us in having programmed, and to be honest, I think it was only like 2 workouts, but one workout had a lot of kettlebell swings, and he was very frustrated with us, and because he was a coach, and he had some of his own experience and everything, and the exercise demonstration video that we had put in was an American kettlebell swing. So the kettlebell goes over the head, as opposed to a Russian kettlebell swing, which stops about eye level. And he was very frustrated that we had programmed in so many American kettlebell swings and that it was going to jack up people's shoulders and all of these things. And ever since then, we've been very clear to differentiate, because my response to him was, oh yeah, I don't care which kind of kettlebell swing you're doing. And he was kind of blown away by that, because I'm like, that's not, I don't care. Like, I don't care if you're doing American. I don't care if you're doing Russian. I care about you having an explosive hip movement in a kettlebell swing to move the kettlebell forward. If that means you only want to move it, to eye level with the Russian style, or above your head because you have good shoulder mobility and it's not going to be that big of a problem. To be honest, I didn't think it was going to be that big of a problem. It sounded like he had really bad shoulders, because kettlebell swing overhead is not something I normally deem as a limiting movement for most people. But anyway, back to my point was, I had to explain to him, like, hey man, all I'm looking for is explosive hip movement. That's what I'm looking for when I program in a kettlebell swing. That's what I'm trying to get you to do. I don't necessarily care about what muscles were worked in the shoulder when you're going overhead. That's That's lower order. That's much less important to me than what I was originally trying to program something for. And that's the overall idea. And what we're trying to discuss is you need to be thinking about, hey, why was this programmed and how can I make it different but still get the same why, the same stimulus? Like, how can I still get that thing? And it takes a lot of time, right? Like you're getting pretty good at it. But I mean, how long would you say it takes to truly develop that skill and knowing how to sub the why, if you will?
Yeah. And even recently it's come up more like, okay, we might be telling you to carry a wall ball, but if you don't have a wall ball, just carry something. And and people who are not comfortable with Olympic movements, that's why we always usually try and say that, clean pulls or something like that, because all you're doing is exploding your hips. But just trying to really think about what the workout is doing and working. And so like if we're doing a supersets, that's just accessory work. Generally those are lower intensity, and you might be doing something to kind of get your heart rate up, but you're still just doing accessory work to kind of build strength, stability, and stuff like that. So you're probably not going to sub something with like a run or something that's going to really get your heart rate going crazy, unless it's like an actual short circuit or something like that. So it depends on every day, and we try and, like, whenever people reach out, to break this down, and hey, always feel free to reach out and ask about that stuff as well.
Yeah, and we explain a lot of that stuff in our athlete briefs and everything. But another thing to note, when we go through, so we have a coaching course where we teach all of our programming. We've had a lot of coaches go through it and stuff. And this is a question I always get from coaches when they're going through the program, because we teach to program two different types of metcons, so metabolic conditioning. The first is 3B, because there are three parts to it. I won't get into the full breakdown. Maybe we can do that one day, but there's 3B and then there is 4D. And the 4D workouts are specifically designed to complement some form of strength training that you did early in the day, but we're doing that through metabolic conditioning, and then we call them 4D metcons. And there's a very specific structure to them. We calculate volume. We make sure it's very specific to what you did, not strength plus some random WOD after the strength session. I find that incredibly frustrating. And so that is what we do with 4D. Now 3B is where we care a little bit less. They're three different movements. They're also a particular order, but they are energy system metcons, not development metcons, which is what the 4D is for. And so what they are for is to train a specific energy system, whether that's glycolytic, oxidative, whatever we're trying to hit. That is what those metcons are for. And so it matters less about volume, it matters less about movement selection, and it matters way more, are you hitting the specific work and rest time ratios? Are you getting to the desired level of intensity through the movement selection? And I'm not trying to overcomplicate this, but I have to explain this to coaches too. So if you're like, hey, I can't do that stuff, don't worry. Like, you can either be a part of a community who can answer questions like that, or you can learn this stuff over time. But sometimes only certain types of stimulus or stimuli will matter, and that could be an energy system, or it can be movement specific, which is what we'd be doing in our 4D, where, hey, you need to sub this movement appropriately to do the right thing, or movements be damned, we're trying to train an energy system. So just train that. Like, if we had, I'll give you a real broad example. Like, we have a lot in our programming this week, oxidative metcons. So we call them sustain at times, but basically I'm trying to get you aerobic through metabolic conditioning. So aerobic exercise, and not high intensity exercise, aerobic exercise. And when I do that, if you can't do any of it for some reason, and it's a 30-minute metcon, you know what would be equivalent to that? A 30-minute jog. You are then doing the same thing I was programming for without doing any of the movements. You know what I mean? Like, you are hitting the energy system that I wanted without doing any of the movements. It's not going to be as beneficial, but you're still getting the same stimulus, and you will improve in the area that I was looking for you to improve upon. So that's just something that's like the next level up of stimulus, but also something that people could take into account.
Yeah, I was talking about next level. It's if you know the stimulus you're going into, then you can actually just really think about and focus on those muscles as you're doing it, or energy systems or whatever. But it just takes a little bit to quite get there.
Yeah, you really have to learn these things at the conceptual level, or you'll always be, you'll just be like a Lego builder, right? You're like, well, I got some red Legos and some green Legos, and I'll put those together. That only works for so long. You want to know how to like actually mold your own damn Legos so you can put things together. And that is the fully autonomous athlete that we are trying to build, right?
Yeah.
All right, man. You have anything else on stimulus?
I don't think so.
So I think the last bullet I had was here is like, yeah, don't miss the forest for the trees. That's just my main point. You know, that's a common saying. Don't miss the forest for the trees. Don't get so ingrained that you're looking at each tree and you're focused on the bark and the tree limbs when you don't realize there's this entire forest around you that's way more important of what you're trying to do versus, a specific tree or that tree or whatever. Like, let's focus on what you're trying to do as a whole, your overall goals, things like that. That's way more important. Mm-hmm. All right, man. Last part of the day. I don't know, man. I'm not super excited about this one. I'm not going to lie, because
for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. And this is the first time I've ever had to do this. So we had a garage gym athlete pass away not that long ago. Her name was DiCarlo. She was a garage gym athlete for several years, used some of our other programs, and she passed away from leukemia. And her husband jumped in the group, and I talked to him, had some conversations. He said it was okay to create a workout in her memory, in her honor. So it's not a lot of fun. I've never actually done this before. I have had more than a few friends pass away in the military, but I've never had to write a workout to try and memorialize someone. So hopefully I don't have to do it again. It wasn't very fun. And but this is our first. Like, all of our workouts are just Meet Yourself Saturday workouts, right? So a lot of the CrossFit hero workouts are to memorialize or in remembrance of a specific hero. This is really our first that does something like that. So when you do this one, think of Anne, think of her family, and really push yourself on this one. Now, the workout itself, my initial thoughts when programming for something of this magnitude was to just make it as hard as humanly possible. And then I had to scale back, and I had to make it realistic. And also I wanted to base it off of Anne specifically. So I went back and looked at some programming that she had completed and things like that. And she was a huge fan of our 1-man 1 kettlebell program and also garage gym athlete programming. She kind of did both. And so I wanted to take what we have a lot of in the 1-man 1 kettlebell program, which is a lot of body weight movement stuff and a lot of kettlebell stuff and a lot of kettlebell breathing ladder specifically. So here's the workout. It is an ascending and descending breathing ladder, and I'm going to have to explain about every single word I just said there, of 1 to 15 to 1 of kettlebell swings, burpees, and double unders. So a breathing ladder, I have an entire article at Into3 Fitness. You could Google breathing ladders Into3 Fitness if you want to know how it works. But essentially, you do 1 rep of a movement, then you take 1 breath, then you do 2 reps, 2 breaths, 3, so on and so forth. But what we're doing is 1 to 15 to 1. So it'd be 1 kettlebell swing, 1 burpee, 1 double under, and then you would take 1 breath. And then you're going to do 2 kettlebell swings, 2 burpees, 2 double unders, 2 breaths. And it sounds really easy, but by the time you get to 6 and you're doing 6 kettlebell swings, 6 burpees, and 6 double unders, and you're trying to take only 6 breaths before you get into 7, you're going to realize it's starting to get difficult. And then it's going to compound and being difficult each subsequent set. And so it's going to get really difficult really fast. Now, we don't expect anyone to hold to the breathing ladder. Like, if you can, that's awesome. If you can't hold the breathing pattern, we just want for you to mark down where you failed. So say you failed at 14, like, I cannot keep this breathing pattern anymore. Just mark where you failed and then finish the workout, but it has a 60-minute time cap. So pretty simple. But when we do, we often program a 1 to 20 to 1. So ascending, that's all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 20, and then back down 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, all the way down to 1. So a lot of repetitions. But when we do this with kettlebell swings alone, that's 1 to 20 to 1 on kettlebell swings. It takes me about 40 minutes. To do that. And, everyone's going to breathe at different paces and rates. So it's not a for time type of thing. In fact, I prefer that you breathe slowly, take huge belly breaths. So from the diaphragm, not these like shallow chest breaths and get back after it. You want to slow that breathing down. Like by the time I get up to like 19 on that kettlebell breathing ladder, like the breathing takes a long time. I'm like sitting there doing very controlled breathing, all the way 19 times, 20 times. It takes a long time. And the reason I think that your panic mechanism will take over before and probably not be able to keep that pace. So anyway, a lot of movements. Keep the breathing patterns for as long as you can with those 3 different movements. I don't know how long this will actually take, but that's why we put a 60-minute time cap to save you a little bit. If you finish it, awesome. If you don't, awesome. Either way, do the freaking workout in memory of one of our athletes and be better for it. So Joe, any tips, tricks, strategies as someone who has completed many a breathing ladders in your day?
Definitely don't overestimate or whatever you think you can do, like weight wise. If everything's weight, underestimate. Go under. I learned that the very first breathing ladder I ever did was cleans, and I was destroyed from cleans because like I could clean a decent amount, but like after 6, 7, 8, I was done, and my hands were done too. And it'll be the same with kettlebell swings, wherever you can really be comfortable with for like a long time. Breathing, definitely the deeper breaths from the beginning. It'll get hard because there's times where I remember when I was doing the breaths, I would almost feel dizzy because I'm really trying to stick to the breathing. But like that was sometimes the hardest part. And then, funny enough, we get this question every time we program these, but breathe normal during the lifts. You're not holding your breath.
That question always comes up. Yeah.
You're not holding the breath during. Just do whatever you would normally do while you're actually exercising.
Or some people think that you need to get, like, if you're on set 14, they think that you need to breathe 14 times during the exercises and 14 times in. So your breath while you're doing work does not matter. Breathe as normal. It's only the rest in between ladder rungs that matter.
Yeah. I mean, if you're efficient kettlebell swings, you're usually breathing as you're moving anyway. You breathe through cadence, but do whatever works for you for the exercises during, but then do your deep belly breaths counted in between.
Yeah, and if I had to tag on any advice, I would foot stomp Joe's advice on the kettlebell weight, because that's the only thing that you really have a weight selection. I would go lighter than you think that you need to, especially on this one, because there are other movements involved. Second, especially with it warming up in a lot of areas right now, chalk. I would
pay attention to your hands. Have
some chalk on hand or wear gloves, especially if you're going to, like, when I do this workout, I will most likely use a 2-pood kettlebell, and it's going to jack up my hands. And so I might have gloves that I can transition to or just use a lot of chalk, but I normally jack up my hands when I do the 1 to 20 to 1. And burpees and double unders shouldn't add to that hand thrashing, but kettlebell swings can pretty easily, especially if you're not accustomed to. I mean, you could go ahead, if you're to finish the workout, you guys could do the math on how many it's going to be, and it's quite a lot of repetitions, especially across 3 different movements. So you're going to be doing a lot of kettlebell swings.
Yep.
All right, so that's it. We got placebo and supplements. Believe in yourself over taking a supplement. Supplements aren't that effective anyway. Learn the why behind your training. And my takeaway for everyone there is just don't get focused on like all of a sudden being good at that. That's a skill that has to be honed over many years. But as long as you start taking that mindset now, and especially if you're following our program, you could look at something and be like, okay, why is this programmed? Because, we have, like I said, we have a lot of people go through our coaching course, and they really say, after they look back at Garage Gym Athlete programming, they're like, wow, like the curtain has been like unveiled. Like I understand what you're doing, why the hell you're doing it, and why every single thing is programmed, because we don't just like make this shit up. We have an actual method that we follow that's taken a long freaking time to develop. But especially if you're looking at our programming, you can kind of start to see a lot of the why. And I think that should be your goal, and understanding the why somebody programmed something. And if you can't really figure out the why, if it's not our programming, you might want to ask the person who created it if they had a why at all, because I would argue that they probably didn't, and that's an issue. And then DiCarlo, guys, this is a big one. I want as many people in our community to do this workout as we can, and post about it on Instagram, tag us. I'll probably write her name on my forearm with a Sharpie and just get after it and make sure that I remember to push myself as hard as I can. All right. Other than that, a few resources we have for you guys. Joe, why should someone sign up for a 14-day free trial at Garage Gym Athlete?
Because it's free and you get nothing, you lose nothing out of it.
Yeah, you really get to experience everything. It's 100% free. You just sign up for a 14-day free trial and you can join us. We have plans for military athletes. We have plans for anybody really in different levels that you can join at. If you need a coach, want to talk to a coach on a regular basis, you can do that too.
We also have the garage where we used to do a whole bunch of past monthly webinars on certain topics like supplements, like warm-ups, like things like that. And it's all on there. So even if you want to hop on and just watch some webinars to see what we do and insights like that.
Yeah, we've actually slowed down on some of that stuff because we were starting to overwhelm people. And so now I'm trying to do one at least once per quarter or once every other month to make sure that we keep our athletes educated. This podcast is a huge step up in that regard as well. But that's the only thing I'm fearful of people when they get into Garage Gym Athlete. Like, all I want you to do when you first get in is download the app and do a workout. Find out where you should be. We have a lot of different resources to see you could test your fitness level and everything like that, but just get moving. And then after you get some workouts under your belt, log back into the members area and start checking out the resources, because we do have a ton of nutrition resources, how to calculate your own macros, tons of webinars you can watch, all this stuff. It really is a huge educational resources. But if you're like, I don't want to be overwhelmed by any of that, then don't be. Download the freaking app and do some work. That's all that we really want you to do and get better for it. Some other resources that I think that you should check out. If you go to garagegymbook.com, I did write a book back in the day. 2016 is when that book came out. And it's really a compilation of a lot of DIY projects and how to get your mind right. And then also a tiny bit on programming in the end. Really, it's I'm going to go ahead and say it's not a ton on programming compared to what we have put together now. But it is a good book to get started if you want to be a Garage Gym Athlete or you want to learn more about some of this stuff. Go to garagegymbook.com and you actually get the book cheaper there than you could on Amazon. But you can also get it on Amazon.com. If you just search the Garage Gym Athlete, you can download that book. And I'm actually writing another book right now. More information coming out about that. I have at least like 3 or 4 books that I want to publish in the next couple of years. And no shit, it's probably going to happen because I want it to. And there will be one book that specifically, if you're like all about this programming stuff, there will be one book specifically just about our programming methodology. But that probably won't be till next year. Right now I'm focusing on the mindset of the athlete. And then last thing, go to garagegymathlete.com and in the resources tab. So there's a little tab that says resources. You can go to like frequently asked questions and see all this other stuff. There's a link inside that resources tab called the fitness test. If you're wondering, where your fitness stands in comparison to our athletes, we put together a pretty robust test for our fitness test. And so we have 2 different fitness tests. One takes about, we made it about a week now. That's what we call Fit Week, where we test all these different parameters. And we also have another one. It's the abbreviated version you can take in one day. It involves a kettlebell and you do some max lifts. You could do it in 2 days if you want to. Anyway, the EO3 fitness test is great. You will enter in all your scores. It'll pop out a number and a color and tell you where you would fit in our programming and at which level. And that's normally like a huge eye opener for people. And then based off of that, if you are one of our athletes, it tells you like where you should be in our programming, like which programs you might want to start with or where you could start. So another great resource if you are just looking to get started with us, or maybe you didn't even know we had this stuff, you can do that. All of our resources at garagegymathlete.com. But that's all I have. You have anything else, Joe?
I don't think so. Just make sure you're going at your workouts with the right intent, and don't try to limit as many crutches in your nutrition supplementation as you can.
Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.